Hey everybody, what's up? I am Reverend Antony Bogdon, also known as the Extreme One. Sorry, I'm fixing my table. Today is going to kind of serve as two parts. One part is going to be a continuation, kind of further detailing a message that I posted last week called Reboot. The second part is going to be kind of a spoiler, things to come, things to expect from Xtreme Fire Ministries in 2026. Now we're going to get into the news and things about Xtreme Fire Ministries and what to expect from us. We're going to talk about that at the end of the message. And the reason for the news being at the end, I want to make sure that the people that hear the news about Xtreme Fire Ministries are people that are sincere in their faith, people that are sincere and they're wanting to see a change, wanting to be a part of the change, wanting more in their relationship and in their walk with Christ. And so I want to make sure that the people that hear the news are the ones that stuck through the message. So I know that they're serious. Now the message is called Cleaning House, and it goes hand in hand with Reboot. And in Reboot, I talked about issues inside the church and how the church needs a reboot. And apparently, according to some people, I wasn't clear in the message. And so most videos on social media only allow a few minutes. And in order to really go in depth in the message, it required an actual sermon, more than just a 3-minute TikTok video. And that's what brings us to today's message, cleaning house. Now, cleaning house is a term that's used a lot of times in businesses, in restaurants, corporations, and things like that. Cleaning house, it's when a new company or a new owner comes in and they clean house. And by that, it means they get rid of all of the people that aren't necessary. They get rid of all of the extra things that is not needed in the business to make sure that it functions more efficiently according to their goal, according to what they need it to do. That's cleaning house. Now, before we really dig into the issues with the church and we start going hard on that, we're going to do something a little uncharacteristic of me. We're going to read scripture right off the bat. It's more than what I usually do. But before we start talking about churches today, we need to understand ministry and churches back then, back in Jesus's time. Now, back then, there were these people called Pharisees, and the Pharisees were the religious leaders of the time. They're the ones that knew the law, the 600 plus laws of Moses, laws of Ecclesiastes, the Old Testament law, however you want to put it. These were the 600 plus laws that they had to live by, which included what we call the 10 Commandments. You see, the 10 Commandments were never a separate thing. They were part of this 600 plus law system they had in play. Now, the Pharisees were the ones that knew this. They upheld religious law. They ran the temples. And these were the ones that Jesus butted heads with constantly. These were the ones that ultimately had him crucified. Now, if we go to the Bible, Matthew 23, verse 2 through 4, and I'm going to be reading from the New Living Translation. It says, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees are the official interpreters of the law of Moses. So practice and obey whatever they tell you, but don't follow their example. Now pay close attention to this part here. For they don't practice what they teach. They crush people with unbearable religious demands and never lift a finger to ease their burden. You see, when we stop and we really think and we start looking at who they were, what they were, when we really start digging deep and we start comparing today to then, we start seeing this comparison. We see this comparison in our churches. We see this comparison in our preachers, in our teachers, and our religious leaders of today. You see, we want to constantly sit there and just hammer people. You can't do this. You have to give 10%. You have to be there every single Sunday. You can't dress this way. You can't associate with these people. You can't listen to this. There's this rule. There's that rule. You're going to hell for this. You're damned for that. All of these do's and these don'ts that they focus on. But not once do they teach the grace, the forgiveness, the love, the mercy that Jesus taught. Not once do they lift their finger to ease these burdens of these do's and don'ts they're hitting people with. It's a clear comparison. Anybody, even the blind, can see the comparison between the leaders of today and then. And then if you go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 20, still in the book of Matthew, still in the red letters, still the words of Jesus. He says, but I warn you, unless your righteousness is better than the righteousness of the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees, you will never enter into the kingdom of heaven. So what it really boils down to is the righteousness of these alleged Christians, these alleged pastors, these supposed churches of Jesus. Is the righteousness higher? Is it better than the righteousness of the Pharisees back then? You can't say that it is when they are repeating these same mistakes. You see, we keep wanting to put our hand and hold people down because the pastor is the shepherd of their flock. God forbid somebody in your church goes out and associates with somebody you don't agree with. God forbid they show up in a bar during the week. God forbid they're friends with somebody that might be a pagan or a Wiccan or even worse, satanic. God forbid they listen to some music that you don't deem necessary. You see, you focus too much on these 10 rules that you want to plaster all over the place. Let's put them in our churches. Let's put them in our schools. Let's shove it down people's throats. These 10 commandments that you have to live by. But the problem is Paul, the Apostle Paul, the one that every church patterns himself after, supposedly. The Apostle Paul taught different. The Apostle Paul didn't teach the 10 commandments. The Apostle Paul didn't teach the law of Moses. The Apostle Paul taught the law of Christ. In Galatians chapter 6, verses 2 through 3, Paul says, share each other's burdens, and in this way, obey the law of Christ. If you think you are too important to help someone, you're only fooling yourself. You're not that important. You see, even after Jesus was gone, the apostles continued preaching and teaching against the Pharisees. And this whole you can't associate with the outside world. This whole we have to lock ourselves inside of 4 walls because we're supposed to be set apart. And by set apart, that clearly means don't associate with anybody outside your church. That is a lie. It is a myth. It is something put in place so that the righteous few can control their congregation, so they can continue to fill their pockets, continue to lift themselves higher, and make themselves look and feel better. Because in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 21, Paul says, when I'm with the Gentiles who do not follow the Jewish law, the 600 plus laws, including the 10 commandments, I too live apart from that law so I can bring them to Christ. But I do not ignore the law of God. I obey the law of Christ. And at first it sounds like there's a contradiction there. It sounds like there's some kind of a problem with what he's saying, because he's saying he doesn't ignore the law of God. He follows the law of Christ. And to understand what the law of Christ is, you see, Jesus said he didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And in fulfilling the law, he set us free from the law. The law was in place to keep the Jewish people where they needed to be until there was a permanent solution. Jesus was that solution. You see, it is impossible to uphold all of the law. It's impossible to keep any of the 10 commandments. But Jesus did. And in doing so, he set us free from the law. He purchased us with his blood. We belong to him. So by belonging to him, we are obligated to him, to his law. And in the Bible, the Pharisees they tried to trap Jesus. They tried to corner him, and they saw that he was outsmarting other religious leaders. And so they asked him, they're like, teacher, what is the greatest commandment? And right here, these words of Christ, here is where we find out what the law of Christ is. In Matthew 22, verse 37 through 40, Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these 2 commandments." You see, this myth that we're bound by all these rules to get into heaven is a lie. It is the teachings of heretics, of liars and fools. It is the teachers of not churches, but cults, not pastors, but these false teachers. We are not bound by 10 laws. We are bound by 2. Love God and love people. Those are the words of Christ. In the Bible, he even says, "I give to you a new commandment. Love others as I have loved you." So if you can explain to me in any way, shape, or form how damning somebody because they love the same sex, because they listen to Marilyn Manson, because they're friends with Jelly Roll, because they might look or sound or act a little different, because they might have a drink or 2 during the week, because they might smoke weed, because they do anything. If you can explain to me how damning them and not showing them the love, mercy, and grace is in any way, shape, or form following Jesus, then I will gladly rip up every ordination I have and quit preaching his word. But you can't, because your theology doesn't line up with the teachings of Christ, let alone the apostles. Because your hypocrisy cannot be proven. Because your doctrine is a lie. Because your churches are full of false Christians and wannabe prophets. The fact of the matter is, these laws that are being used to uphold the righteous and hold down the rest of the world are false. The truth is, this whole system in play where we're not supposed to go out in the world goes against the entire teaching of Christ. If you really want to be his church, if you really want to be his servant and his follower, it requires putting foot to pavement, not asses in pews. It requires going outside the walls, not waiting for them to come in. It requires actually putting forth the work. And if you cannot love everybody, regardless of who they are, what they've done, where they're from, what they believe, or anything else, if you cannot love them regardless, then you cannot call yourself a Christian. And if you cannot preach sin without preaching salvation, you are not a preacher, my friend. You are a Pharisee, a heretic, and a liar. And this brings me to the good news that I have about Xtreme Fire Ministries, because today marks the official birth of Xtreme Fire. Because coming in March, Xtreme Fire will start hosting a weekly Bible study. Now we're going to do this underground church style, so you're going to have to actually pay attention and actually watch to find out when and where these weekly services will be held. We're doing this because, like I said, I don't want weekend warriors to end there. I don't want a Sunday Christian in here. I want those that will lay their life on the line for somebody that is hated. I want people that are serious about following Jesus into the trenches, that will walk through the pits of hell to save one person. The people that will lay their life on the line for somebody that hates them. That's who I want. And we're going to start these Bible study off with what is called Journey 33. Journey 33 is a Bible study that God gave me. It's following the Gospels and chronological order. It will take Jesus from being a character in a book to being an active person, a physical being, a legitimate relationship with him. It will shine a whole new light to who he is. That is coming in March. And from the underground will grow the group that will birth the weekly public services of Xtreme Fire Ministries. And when that day does come, we're not going to call it a church because we are not a church. This isn't your granny's church where we try to control every aspect of your life. No, this is a ministry that loves people for who they are, where they are. Instead, it is going to be called a worship experience because that is what should happen. When you're inside of God's presence, you should experience worship. Something that our churches like to falsify and practice. Here's the reality. Love God. Love people. It's that simple. If your churches are doing those two commandments, I commend you. And us here at Xtreme Fire Ministries would love to stand with you, stand beside you, and fight in the trenches with you. But if your church does not love God and love people, if you are not sincerely, truly following Christ, then be expected to be called out. Be expected to be put on blast. Because like I said, the church, we need to clean house. We need to get rid of all the junk that isn't necessary and start from the basics. The bare minimum, the essential, what we should have kept the whole time. And if you find yourself in the crosshairs, just know this is not a cry for revival. This is a call out to every loser, every outcast, every black sheep, everybody that has ever been hurt, damned, or pushed away from the church, everyone that's ever been abused by someone that's called themselves a minister. This is a call out to them to stand with us because this is not about revival. The church has gone too far for revival. This is about a revolution. I'm not here to bring people into your churches. We are here to see your church doors closed. We are here to see the true church of Christ, those that are truly following him, stand up and take their place on the battle lines for people's souls. Because where you're too scared to go, we will. It's just life. Stop dictating your life by rules and regulations and traditions that were never meant for you. You get one life, one shot. And when judgment day comes and when you're standing before your maker, what are you going to say to him? I love tradition and law more than your people? Or I was willing to put foot to pavement. I was willing to be outcast and black sheeped by everybody just to reach one person in the gutter. It's just life. Live it. Live it for him.